I got a phone call from Kanye West people telling me that the Louis Vuitton Don was in Atlanta and wanted to see me. Kanye was nearby at Pinewood, Atlanta, a 700-acre film studio in Fayetteville. Atlanta has become a major filmmaking mecca in recent years, and Pinewood is where they shot all the big Marvel superhero movies like The Avengers and Black Panther. Kanye had flown his whole team down from Wyoming and set up shop in Stage 17, the studio's biggest soundstage. I put on a gray camel hair Balenciaga sweater, hopped in my Phantom, and made my way over. I was pulling up on Kanye with some skepticism. For as long as I've known him, close to 20 years now, my dog has been ruffling people's feathers in one way or another. It's what people love and hate about Kanye. It wasn't until recently that his antics ever rubbed me the wrong way. That started around the time he came out in support of Donald Trump for president and started saying things like slavery was a choice. These days, Kanye was singing a slightly different tune. He'd apparently lost faith in Trump and decided that he should be the president instead. He was still saying a lot of foul shit, like that Harriet Tubman never freed the slaves and that vaccines were the mark of the beast, that chemicals in deodorant and toothpaste were preventing people from being in service to God. Just a few days earlier, he'd gone on one of his lengthy Twitter rants where he said he wanted to divorce Kim Kardashian because she was trying to get him locked up like Nelson Mandela. Kanye was acting ocky. There was no doubt about that. But he and I had a history together, and I'm not the type of person who ends friendships over tweets, especially because I wasn't totally clear on what was really going on. At the same time Kanye was saying all this weirdo, goofy shit, he had also just donated $2 million to the families of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. There were a lot of contradictions and things weren't adding up. I knew Kanye had been open about being bipolar, so maybe my brother was going through some mental health shit. It had been a few years since I'd last seen Kanye face to face, and I wasn't sure why he wanted to see me. At first, I was thinking maybe he needed somewhere in Atlanta to host one of his Sunday services. The Promised Land would most definitely be a beautiful place for that. Or maybe he wanted to get my support for his presidential campaign. I had my own reasons for going. I was working on a new album, Richer Than I've Ever Been, and I needed some of that classic, soulful Kanye West production. I remember being blown away when Kanye invited me to Hawaii in 2010 to be a part of his 5th album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I'd never been in one studio with so many elite rappers, producers, and engineers at the same time. They called it Rap Camp. This situation he had going on at Pinewood Studios was equally impressive, but it was on a totally different type of vibe. After getting past security, it was like Fort Knox to get in that bitch. I was greeted at the entrance by Kanye's longtime manager, John Monopoly, and then, to my surprise, retired NBA player Rick Fox. That was a curveball. I always knew Rick Fox to be a reliable small forward. I'd had no idea his career after basketball involved working for Kanye West. Kanye showed up a few minutes later with an older white gentleman. We couldn't embrace properly due to the social distancing, but it was all love between us. Kanye seemed like himself. Despite his erratic tweets, there was no indication that he was in the middle of some type of manic episode. I recognized the man standing next to him. It was Dan Cathy, the chairman and CEO of Chick-fil-A. Being in the fast food business myself, I've always made it a point to familiarize myself with the power brokers in the industry. Regardless of what field you're in, you want to be in the know as to who's running shit. You can learn from their successes as well as their mistakes and apply those lessons to your own hustle. What I hadn't known was that Dan Cathy was also the owner of Pinewood Studios. This motherfucker was really rich. He and Kanye had built a friendship rooted in their shared religious beliefs, which is how Ye had gotten plugged in with the studio's biggest soundstage. "It's nice to meet you, Rick," Dan said. "So, are you and Kanye good friends?" Kanye cut in before I could respond. "Oh yes, we're very good friends, Dan. As a matter of fact, Rick and I used to rap in front of hotels together." Wow. Well, that's interesting. Dan left a couple of minutes later, and Kanye started giving us the lay of the land. He'd relocated his entire operation, his music, his sneaker and clothing lines, as well as his presidential campaign, to this one 40,000 square foot space. "The way the room is set up is based on how all these things are all organized in my brain," he explained. Excuse me, can we send a photographer to the top of that ladder for a bird's eye view from overhead? I'd really like for Rick to see what the inside of my brain looks like. We've only been here 4 days, and we're already running out of space, Rick Fox added. If we're going to stay past September, Dan says we may have to move to one of the smaller stages. That's strike 2 with these people, Kanye said. You want to know what strike 1 was? Of course, I replied. Strike 1 was when I requested the circular tables, and it took over an hour for them to arrive. Guess who I called during that hour? I can only imagine. Tyler Perry, because he's the only other black man I know who's made movies here, I said. Tyler, how long am I supposed to wait for my circular tables? And how long did he say? He didn't know, but he said that these are good people that work here and that I shouldn't take the table situation personally. That makes sense. I know. I really just wanted to let Tyler know I was here in his city, and that was my way of reaching out to tell him that. I wasn't sure how to respond to that one. Luckily, the conversation shifted as Rick Fox continued the tour and brought us over to the Yeezy apparel and footwear area. There were rows of sewing machines and geometric color-coded piles of clothing and sneakers everywhere. It looked like a sweatshop. Kanye's sneaker deal with Adidas had recently made him a billionaire, and he was about to make a whole lot more money through a recently announced clothing partnership with Gap. That was if he didn't talk himself out of it. Despite his tremendous success in the fashion world, Kanye was frustrated. I'm not on the board of directors at Adidas, and I'm not on the board of Gap either. Do you know what that is? He asked. It's white supremacy. Then he leaned in and whispered something else to me. Tell me, Rick, do you think Jeff Bezos would agree to these deals? This kept happening during my visit. Kanye would have my attention and he'd be onto something, but then he would lose me. As far as Adidas, I could wrap my mind around what he was saying. He did this deal, and it turned out to be a way bigger success than anyone probably imagined. And now he wanted more. More money, a seat on the board, whatever. I understood that. I've had to restructure my contracts as my value increased. But what I couldn't understand was how he just did this deal with Gap 2 months ago, and he was already yelling about the white supremacy and Jeff Bezos. If having a seat on the board was so important to Kanye, why didn't he demand it while they were negotiating the terms of their arrangement? I'm sure they could have made a spot for him on the board. I couldn't remember the last time I saw a nigga in a Gap sweatshirt. Gap's stock price had soared upon the news of their partnership. Kanye was about to turn that whole company up. I doubt they would let him walk away over something like that. I just didn't understand how he could agree to a deal and then start going crazy over it so soon after. That shit just didn't make any sense to me. The tour concluded with a presentation on Kanye's presidential campaign. Standing in front of a 100-foot screen that featured an American flag flapping in the wind, Kanye explained his 2020 vision. God is love. Jesus. White supremacy. Christian TikTok. Recycling. Yeezy igloos. Honestly, I tuned out during most of it, but something he said afterward got my attention. Tomorrow, I might tweet that I don't feel like being president anymore, he said. It's gonna get 1 million retweets, one of his campaign staffers responded. That's when it all hit me. I've been trying to make sense of Kanye's erratic behavior because, after all, the man was worth $1 billion, and that was what I was working toward. So I had to be missing something. But the answer had been right in front of my face the entire time. This was the whole fucking play. Kanye wasn't successful in spite of his ockiness. The ockiness was the whole point. Fake running for president, fake going crazy on Twitter, the ugly foam slides, the clothes were ugly on purpose. All of this shit was for attention. And it really didn't matter if it was positive or negative attention because his brand grew either way. That's why he liked Donald Trump. That's why he loved the Kardashians. It all made sense now. When Kanye and I were rapping in front of hotels in 2002, we were on a similar mission. Young, hungry, and hopeful that our work ethic and the quality of our music would lead to fame and fortune. But this was a new chapter of Kanye's career. And now everything was strictly about shock value. That was why he was now making songs called Scoopity Poop. Say what you want to say about it, but the strategy was working out well for him. Kanye could spend $10 million on advertising for his campaign his album, his clothes, whatever he wanted to promote. And that would last a weekend. But if he went on Twitter and called Kris Jenner Kris Jong-un, that shit would be covered by every news outlet for weeks for free. It all made sense now. Kanye had mastered the art of Aki manipulation. I was fucked up.